Hello and welcome to the Modern Barber Masterclass supported by BaByliss PRO. Today we're joined by Kevin Luchmun. I'm Charlotte, editor of Modern Barber, and we're so excited to have Kevin. He's going to be showing us a modern classic demonstration. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Charlotte. Thank you for having me, and thank you to BaByliss for supporting this. So I'm going to get started straight away, unless there's anything that you need to say on top of that, Charlotte. No? Okay, cool, fantastic. So guys, thank you very much for tuning in. So as Charlotte was saying, today what we are working on is a modern day classic. Now, a lot of people always ask me the question of like, what do I think that's going to be coming into trend at the moment? And, you know, what is happening with today's, haircuts? And as we know, with COVID-19, I'm here in my studio, a lot of men are actually starting to grow their hair. But it's one of those ones that I think a lot of men are still really excited to get back into the barbershop and go for those fades, okay? So to me, a modern day classic is still a taper or a fade and working something a bit more short on top. As we think about it, we're actually starting to come in towards the spring, summertime. So men are gonna want to have their hair taken in shorter. At the moment, you can see here, we are working on a longer length of mannequin heads, which I actually have already pre-cut on one side, okay? So I'm gonna show you guys the steps and the process that I'm gonna work towards cutting this demonstration. So you can see here that I've already pre-sectioned the hair off, okay? Like I said, because we're gonna be working on a shorter length of hairstyle, I'm gonna keep it simplistic, okay? So we've worked it as a horseshoe, which has been subdivided from the top from the underneath. Now you can see here where I placed my horseshoe. I placed it just above the curvature of the head, because the reason why is because I want to take this shorter throughout the underneath, okay, which I'm going to be working with the clippers. As I said, you can see here where I've already pre-sectioned and pre-cut the hair on the opposite side. So we are actually working with a low taper. You can see here we're working with a shorter length and then gradually working up towards our longer length on the curvature of the top, okay? From that, then we can start to connect the length on the top how we wish, whether we're going to be taking it very short or we're going to keep it longer as well, okay? Now, you can see here on the sides, we've got this side here that we need to obviously cut, okay? So what we're going to do first is I'm going to start to create myself a guideline, okay? So we've got different ways on how we can do this. But initially, by creating a guideline, it's going to make life a little bit more easier as I start to work with the clippers, okay? If I create myself a guideline on the curvature of the head, then I've got a guide to work up with the clippers and work up towards that initial line. So I'm going to show you guys several different ways on how you can create your guideline. So we're going to first work it through with our scissors. So we're going to work on the curvature of the head. We're just going to subdivide on top of the ears. Okay, combing the section of hair that we're not going to cut out of the way. Now from here, because we want this to be soft on the curvature of the head, we're going to comb the hair to a high elevation. Okay, working to a high elevation, we're working to a 1 finger's depth. And then from here, we're going to use our scissors and we're going to cut parallel to our section which we've created. Now, because everything's going to be taken shorter from the underneath, we're just going to over direct everything up towards that initial guide, okay? And just follow it through. I don't really care too much about taking the area here shorter because I know I'm going to be taking that short off with the clippers. Now we're going to progress towards the back area, okay? So I'm going to show you guys another way on how you can do it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to work with a jumbo comb. We're going to work through with our clippers. We're going to work with the BaByliss. We're going to comb through from the underneath. And what we're doing is we're working from the guide taken from the curvature of the head. My comb is parallel to the section which I've just created. And then from here, we're just going to cut it parallel to our guideline from what we've just created through. So again, all we're doing now is creating a guideline on the curvature of the head. Okay, making sure that our comb is directly parallel in front of the section and making sure that we're creating the same guide through that curve of the head. Okay, once I've done that and I've created the guideline and I'm happy with the guideline, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to dry the hair on that curvature of the head. We're going to work with our hair dryer. Now we're just going to work on medium speed, medium heat. And we're just going to comb the hair down in the direction where we want it to sit and fall. Okay? By working with the hair dryer going down, it's going to help encourage the hair lay flat, okay, and naturally how it wants to sit. If you start to dry from the underneath or just go a bit vigorous with the hair dryer, it might actually encourage the hair to jump up, okay? So just be aware of that. Okay, once the hair is dry on the underneath, what we're going to do now is we're now going to start to work with our clipper attachments. Now, first off, we're going to work with the number 3 guard, okay? So anyone that's from Europe or works on like other like sizes, it's 10 millimeters, but okay, but obviously in the UK, we talk on numbers. So we're working with the number 3 first. Now, you can start from the back, you can start from the sides, wherever you feel is more comfortable for yourself. Starting with the clipper closed, we're going to work from the underneath and we're working up towards our horizontal layer from which we've just created. Now you can start to see here, as I work with my clippers, every stroke that I'm working, I'm just making sure that I'm just combing the hair down to natural full, okay? And as you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm working up towards my initial guide on the curvature of the head, and then I'm just starting to scoop away. So I'm working up towards the initial guide, and as I work towards that guide, I just start to scoop away. Now, the reason why I'm scooping away is because if I follow the contours of the head, we're going to start to take it too short on the curvature of the head, and we're going to start to cut in towards our guide from which we've already created. So working with the number 3, we're just starting to remove all the excess hair from the underneath. And what we're doing is we're creating ourselves a nice clean canvas to which we can then start to fade through. Now, as you see here, we've worked with the number 3 and it's faded and actually connected towards that initial guide on the curvature of the head. Now, if you wanted to refine it a little bit more, of course, you could work a little bit of clipper over comb. You could work scissor over comb as well, okay? So it's entirely up to you. Now, what we're gonna start to do now with the actual fade is we're gonna start to descend in the actual length, okay? So we're gonna work with the number 2 now. So what we're going to start to do is we're now going to start to fade down towards the perimeter outline, okay? We're going to start at the back area first, okay? You know, I tend to start at the back area. The reason why is because it's a bit more wider. I've got more area to work with. Starting with the number 2, just going to work up towards the occipital bone. So I'm actually going to use my occipital bone as a guide. And then I'm just working it through either side. And same thing again, as I'm working up towards the occipital bone, I'm making sure that I'm just scooping the hair away, just so we start to blend in towards that number 3. Now, what I've done now, just to obviously soften the line through, I've just opened up the tapering arm, and that's just going to help soften off those areas as well. Okay, working with the tapering arm, it's going to cut the hair from short to long. So if you're seeing areas that are slightly darker, obviously you can turn the tapering arm, so it's going to cut a little bit shorter, and it's going to help fade those areas through a bit more seamlessly. Working with the 1.5 now. Now, as we're starting to work down towards the shorter numbers, all I need to make sure is that I'm progressively working lower and lower and closer towards the nape area, okay? As I said, we're starting to descend, so we're wanting to obviously fade it down towards a shorter length around the perimeter outline. Once we've worked to 1.5, working down towards the lower number now, we're going to start to work with the number 1. Again, just keeping it a little bit closer towards that nape area. But again, you can see here, the motion that we're working with is just ensuring that we're flicking away, just so we're going to start to create a nice seamless fade and seamless blend throughout. Now, there's different ways that I could continue with this technique. I could then work with a 0.5, work it down slightly lower, then start to work with no guard and taper it right down. But I'm actually going to show you guys a different way and another way that you could potentially work with the fade. So we're actually going to work with no guard now. So there's no guard. You can see here with the lever, we're pushing the lever right up, and that's going to cut the hair towards a shorter length, okay? Now, first off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself a guideline, okay? So just working through with the clippers, we're just going to work horizontally across, and that's going to create the shortest point or the shortest part of the haircut, okay? Like I said, what we're working on is a low taper. Now, from here to take it in even shorter, what we're going to do is we're going to work with the BaByliss trimmers, okay? BaByliss trimmers, you can see here, we're working with a T-blade. It's going to make it a little bit more easier, especially as I start to work just around the curvature and the contours of the actual hair. And also, it's going to take it in that little bit more tighter, okay? The teeth itself is finer, so it's going to cut the hair a lot more shorter. Again, when I'm working with the neck trimmers, just ensuring that I'm working below the initial line from which I've just created. Same thing again, we're making sure that we're just flicking it through. So working from the underneath and just flicking just so it's going to be a little bit more shorter just around those areas. Okay, now I think I'm just going to say this just before anyone asks me the questions on which doll's head or which mannequin heads that I'm using. Now I'm actually using a pivot point one, and you know, don't pay me to say this, but by far they are the best mannequin heads that I've used. And the reason why is because they're so realistic. So even when I'm doing a fade, you know, you can really practice your actual fading techniques. You know, I sometimes find when you're working with, let's just say cheaper ones, and don't get me wrong, I know these come in a little more of the expensive side, but when you work on the cheaper ones that you can get from like Amazon or eBay, honestly, like I just find that you just can't perfect your fade. You can't practice as much as you can when you're working on something that's a bit more decent. Our next step now is we're going to open the blade. So we're working to a 0.5, just going to work it a little bit higher and just going to create myself another guideline. Okay, so now what I'm working with is I'm working with 2 different guidelines. Okay, same thing again, making sure that I'm just flicking away. And you can see here, we've got a 0 here, we've got a 0.5 here, and then we've got our number 2 here, which is lane. So all we're going to start to do now is fade in the different lines, okay? So we're just going to start to close the tapering arm a little bit shorter, and we're going to work on that bottom line until it starts to disappear. So this is where it comes to whenever you're fading hair, it's the attention to detail that really, really makes a huge difference. Okay, I always say, you know, I make a joke about it. It's like, if you can fade something perfectly on a mannequin head, when you actually get towards doing it on a real life person, it's going to be a lot more easier. So, you know, Charlotte, if you want to practice on mannequin heads, I think with the amount of demonstrations you've been watching, you should be able to become a barber, to be fair. Okay, so just continuing working through. You know, one tip that I always say as well is whenever you're fading hair is use the corner of the clipper, okay? You can either use the right-hand side, you can use the left-hand side, whichever you find is going to be easier in order to create that nice seamless look, okay? You know, it really is like you're etching out and just removing any of the dark areas. What we're going to do now, just to remove this top line as we start to work towards the number 2, we're going to work with a 0.5 guard. Same thing again, we're going to open up the tapering arm, making sure that we're working towards a longer length. And we're just going to work on that line. Same motion again. We're just starting to work it through and just flick that line until it starts to disappear. And remember, when you're working clipper and techniques like this, that you're standing directly in front of your section so you can clearly see what you're cutting. You know, I'm just making sure that I'm a little bit out of the way just so you guys can see the technique that we're working. Now, obviously looking on the screen, I can see here, there's a slight fake line that's just around here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work with the number 1 guard. So you can see here, we're starting to work higher in numbers. Open again, so we're working to a longer length, working on that line. And this is now where we're going to start to see it come to life and fade from the short length up towards that longer length. Okay, remember, same thing again, just consistently brushing or combing the hair down so you can see exactly how it's laying naturally. And then we're going to start to work with our 1.5 guard. So again, we're working up towards the numbers until it starts to seamlessly blend through. Okay, now then obviously you can see here that we're working with the main clippers just to create the initial blend. Once I'm happy with the technique and and there I am. Once I'm happy with the technique and I'm happy with how it's sitting, this is where the small little details are really going to make a huge difference. So I can start to see here now on the camera, there's a slight darker bit here. You know, there's a slight darker bit around here. And this is where I'm going to go back with the trimmers. I'm going to use my comb and I'm just going to work a little bit of clipper over comb just to remove any of those dark spots and those dark areas. Okay, so again, I'm just going to turn the mannequin head just so it's facing myself. Just working on those darker areas until we start to seamlessly blend that hair through. Okay, once we've done that, we're just going to work on the sides now. So what we do on the sides, we're going to work the same exact technique, working with our trimmers as well as the clippers. Once you start to understand what you're doing and how you're doing it, you can actually do it relatively quite fast. You know, a lot of people say, oh yeah, does it take you a long time to fade hair? It's like anything. Something's going to take you a long time when you don't know what you're doing or you're new to doing it. Once you start to understand the technique and you start to understand what you need to do, it can be relatively quite fast. And of course, like I said, it's all about the flicking of the wrist, okay? Once you start to perfect that, and once you start to get comfortable with it, you can actually start to skip different steps. So you can see here, I've just went from a 0 to a 0.5, and now I'm working straight up towards with the number 1, okay? From here, you can see here, I'm really just flicking it hard, just so we're gonna start to fade up towards that longer length of hair. Okay, and you can see here, as easy as that, and as quick as that, start to fade in towards those areas. Same thing again, we're gonna work a little bit clipper over comb around those areas. And this is where working with the T-blade really starts to help you make your life a little more easier, just to detail around those contour areas that are really problematic. You know, I kind of wish when I'm cutting real people's hair that the ears would be like this, because I always find that like having ears in the way is always difficult. But here it's like I can kind of like just go in with the clippers and they're not gonna, my mannequin head's not really gonna say anything to me. Pretty sad really, but still, it's all good. It's all practice. You can start to see here, just making sure that we're working with the wider tooth of our comb and just refine those areas, okay? Now, when you're working with clippers, what tends to happen is sometimes your eyes plays tricks on you, especially, you know, if you're looking at something at the same, you know, at the same time all the time. So what we're actually going to start to do now is we're going to start to work towards the length on the top, okay? So we're going to start to concentrate on the length on the top now. Now, we're going to connect the back area, okay? Because we want this to be connected at the back area. Then as we start to progress towards the side areas, there's going to be a slight disconnection there, okay? And that is just so we can build a bit more texture as we start to crop it forward. Now, talking about a modern day classic, you know, to me, if we think about a classic hairstyle, you know, a lot of people associate a classic hairstyle with a side parting and swept back and like, you know, James Dean, you know, that sort of like type of look. But nowadays I think to myself, you know, I've got a kid and my kid, he's going to be 2 in May. And for me, what a classic haircut is something that happened like 20, 30 years ago, 40, 50 years ago, however long ago. For my son, when he becomes like 21 or whatever, he's going to be associating classic haircuts with the skin fade because it's what's relevant now. It's what's been relevant for like the past few years, you know. So this is kind of like my interpretation of a modern day classic, you know. It's one of those ones, I think, with a skin fade, a taper, a crop now, it's going to be very much a classic haircut. It's very much always going to be in there. There's always going to be people that want this type of haircut. You know, one, because it's a very low maintenance haircut. And 2, it's one of those ones that you can go to a barber shop and say short back and sides or a skin fade a little bit longer on the top, okay? Length from the back, like I said, I want to connect it through. So what we're going to do, you can see here, we just subdivided it from the crown towards the top of the ears. And we're just going to work diagonal sections, okay? Now, working on the diagonal sections, we're just working down towards a lower elevation. And the reason why is if I went too high, we're going to start to round it off and it's going to be too short in the crown. Okay, so again, just understanding your elevation to how high or to how low you lift something up is going to change the dimension of the haircut, okay? So you can see here, my fingers are going to be parallel to the guide from the underneath, ensuring and making sure that we're following it through and connecting it throughout. You can see here that I'm point cutting, and the reason why I'm point cutting is because we want to build up a bit of softness just around this area here. Let's just say if we was working with someone that's got finer hair, working on finer hair, you could blunt cut, and that's going to help maintain a little bit more weight on that area that we're cutting. But because we want to work on something that's going to build a bit more texture, you can see here, point cutting is going to be the correct technique to work. You know, but of course, depending on what you're doing, you can adjust it through. Let's just say if you wanted to like take this in a little bit shorter around the crown area and you wanted to build a bit more texture, you could, of course, increase in your elevation, okay? You know, in hairdressing, barbering, there is no wrong or right ways. You know, you do you, boo. Just like Charlotte, she does what she wants to do, okay? So it's entirely up to you. And, you know, I always say your clients will come to you because they like the way how you cut their hair. They like the way how you style hair. So it's one of those ones, you know, that as long as your client's happy, and I always say that's the most important thing whenever you're cutting hair. You know, I could show you guys some fancy techniques. You know, I could be doing this, I could be doing that. But then if you do it on a client, they might say, oh my God, it's a little bit too crazy. Like, I can't maintain it. It's not wearable. I find it difficult to style because you spent about half an hour styling my hair. But it's one of those ones, you know, like I said, if a client's got enough time to do it, then of course, but so, you know, this is where it's important to understand about consultation as well for the clients. So we're now going to start to work towards the side areas. So you can see here, the back area has already been connected through. We've got our overhanging on the sides. And what we want to do is we want to connect the sides, but we want there to be a slight overhang. And the reason why is because I want there to be that movement that's going to be happening for the actual fringe. So what we're going to do, we're going to stand on the sides, just going to comb it down as a center profile parting. So we're just subdividing from left to right. From here, we're just going to work a slight diagonal section. Show you guys on the side. Okay, so we're working a slight diagonal section as we start to work towards the actual front. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to over direct this section back towards the area where we've actually connected it at the back. And the reason why is as I start to work each section, we're going to start to over direct back towards the stationary guide. Okay, so everything's being pulled right back towards that stationary guide. You know, it's not being pulled out from base. What this is going to do is going to help me maintain a little bit more longer length towards that fringe area. Okay, still point cutting just for that softness. So as I start to comb it down, we've connected it at the back area here, but then it starts to travel through and there's a slight disconnection on the sides. Once we've done one side, we're going to do the same on the opposite side. Same thing again, over directing back towards the stationary guide that's already been connected through at the back. And then just continuing through as we work towards the front area. Now, of course, if you wanted to take it in a little bit shorter and you didn't want there to be a disconnection, you could just work diagonal sections and pull everything straight up from base, okay? So again, really just depends on what your overall shape and your end goal is going to be when you're cutting hair. So just working that last section as we come towards the fringe area, deeply parallel point cutting it just for that softness. I'm just going to comb it all down straight first. So Charlotte, has anyone got any questions so far?
No questions yet, Kevin, and you answered my question, which was going to be that blockhead looks really high quality. What brand is it? So you're right on the money there.
Oh, Charlotte, you see I've got a new tattoo. I've got a line.
Ooh, oh yeah, nice.
Yeah, obviously I didn't get it like during lockdown, you know. I'll show you because oh no, you can't see. What? I'll show you in real life. It's cool. Bloody hurt though.
Oh my God, I bet that is such a sensitive part. Ow.
Yeah, but you know what? I was just like, YOLO. Okay, so we're going to work on the top area now. So we're just going to wet it down just a little bit, just so we've got a bit more room to play around with. We're going to start from the crown, standing directly behind, keeping it simple. Working a horizontal section, and we're just going to deeply parallel point cut through square. Okay, so again, like I said, we're trying to work with a lot of internal texture as we're working with this crop. So as we style it through, it's going to be really soft and really textured. So continuing working section upon section, everything now is actually pulled straight up from base. If you wanted it even more longer, of course, you could start to over direct it back towards the previous or over direct it back towards that stationary. Okay, so it's entirely up to you. We're just working it through.
I've actually got some questions now.
No, I gave them a chance. No, go on, what's up?
Oh my gosh, 2 people have said, where have you bought your head block from? So it's Pivot Point, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, cool. Replied to them. You got your answer for that, guys. And then someone has also asked about using sea salt spray
okay.
For this. Is that something that you would use?
Yeah, so initially when I'm working on shorter length like this, like I have actually used a little bit of gel, okay? So it's a very soft, lightweight gel, okay? And that's just helped me pre-section the hair, and it's gonna help with the blow drying as well. In regards to creating more texture on top, yeah, definitely something like a sea salt spray, volumizing spray or something like that. But I think whenever you're working on men, I always say less is more, okay? Another thing you've got to remember is as you start to dry the hair, as the hair starts to become a little more drier, when you work the product on the hair when it's dry, it's going to activate even more. Okay, so for example, if I'm going to work sea salt spray on the hair when it's wet, it's going to dilute the product down. Okay, so sometimes what I tend to do is dry the hair till it's kind of like towel dry, spray a little bit of the product, and then dry it again. And you know, a lot of these products you can actually start to build it up as well. Okay, so you don't really need to add too much product. Right, this hairdryer is pretty loud, so I'm actually just going to tell you guys what I'm doing first. So now the technique's already cut, I am going to be taking the fringe a little bit shorter. We're going to start to dry the hair all towards the face, okay? Because we want that texture and we want the look to be coming down on the face, okay? So again, working with the nozzle of the hairdryer, point in the direction where I want the hair to sit and fall. Going to use our hands and dry it forward. Okay, so the hair's dry now. You can start to see here the actual texture that I've created. Now you can start to see where it's quite top heavy, and the reason why, like I said, because everything was over directed back towards that stationary point, but this is the type of look that I want to create. Like I said, if you want it a bit softer, you don't have to over direct it. You could pull everything straight out from base. Now, what we're going to do now is we're just going to start to take the fringe in a little bit shorter. So we're just going to comb the fringe down. And what I really want to create is an irregular fringe, okay? I want the fringe to really be broken up. I don't want it to look too perfect. But again, when you're working a technique like this, of course, you need to bear in mind that you're working on the right client, okay? Not a fringe like this isn't going to suit everyone. And when you're doing this on someone, you know, make them aware that you've got the clippers towards their forehead and make sure that they understand that they are going to be taking the fringe shorter. And also, massive one is make sure you don't cut the eyebrows. Okay, so just always be aware of where the eyebrows are laying. Again, plus thing is, we're working on a mannequin head. He has no eyebrows. So we're just going to comb the hair straight down. I'm going to work back with the trimmers again. You know, this technique could be worked with a comb, but you've got to remember when you're working with trimmers, it really starts to create sharp lines, which is what we want to do. Combing the hair straight down.
Is that the super motor trimmers there, Kevin?
Yeah, it's a super motor cordless trimmers. Let me see if I can get it on focus.
And they're pretty.
Oh,
nearly.
Nearly. How I'm a one-man band, you know this. It's difficult for me to do everything. Yeah, but again, because the teeth are so fine, you know, it's really going to create that sharp edge, which is what we're looking for, okay? So we're just going to start in the middle first, and all we're going to do is we're literally just going to take a section of hair out, okay? And we're working at a slight angle. Now, the angles that I work with, they're just going to be irregular. So again, this is where it comes down to taste. This is where it comes down to suitability for the client. And this is where it comes down to your personal preference and what you like to see within an end result. So just working with clippers, literally just randomly, just taking sections, working at slight diagonals. We're working up the head shape. We're working down the head shape. We're sometimes working a bit block. And we're just making it really irregular, okay? And what you'll start to see, like people are probably looking at this like, oh my God, what the hell are you doing now? Just taking chunks. And yeah, I think for a client that you don't actually explain this to, they are gonna be like, oh my God, you're just taking chunks out of my hair. But the idea behind this is to create an irregular fringe, but then still maintain that thickness and fullness for the haircut. As I said, just be aware when you're working this technique on a client, that you bear in mind where the fringe, where the actual eyebrows is. You know, at this moment of time, like I said, because we're working on a mannequin head, I don't even care if I hit on the eyebrows, but that's one thing that I'd always be careful with and mindful with when I'm working on a client a technique like this. So we're just literally just being really irregular and just chomping away. I like that word, chomping away on the fringe.
Technical term.
Chomp. That's it. Hey, I'm a technical person. I like to chomp. That's how I like to chomp my pizza. So we're just working it through now. And this is where, once you've created your foundation, you can start to see here how the fringe is irregular, okay? You know, it might not suit everyone, but like, for example, if you're doing an editorial shoot or you're doing something where you want to create something a bit more dramatic, working a technique, you could obviously work like this. So refining it through with the trimmers. Of course, if you wanted to use the scissors to refine it through, you can. But you can see here how quick and simple and easy it is working through with the clippers, just to remove any of those imperfections. Now, from here, just to soften the area just around the fringe, still want it to be thick and full, but just want it to be a little bit more softer. Just going to work through straight out at 90 from the head shape, and we're just going to deeply parallel point cut just around where that fringe is going to sit and where it's going to fall. Okay, and this is just going to still maintain that thickness and fullness of the fringe, but it's just going to ever so slightly soften it just a little bit more. So as I start to work with products, there's going to be a bit more movement just around the fringe area. Okay, now in regards to texturizing, personalizing, like I don't go too crazy. I only just do it in the areas that's needed. You know, think about it. I've already point cut just around the curvature of the head, point cut on the length from the top. So there's no real need to texturize it anymore. So once we've done, go on. You got a question?
I've got a question. Put my hand up.
Put your hand up.
Someone has asked if you would use the same cutting technique in afro hair.
Oh God, why have you got to ask such an awkward, hard question? I'm joking.
I don't know if that's relating just to the fringe or the overall cut.
So cutting afro hair compared to cutting Caucasian hair is completely different. In regards to when you're fading, you will be cutting against and with the grain, and you'll be cutting across the grain as well. In regards to length on top, like, I mean, if someone had afro hair and it laid like this, it's not afro hair, but if they wanted to recreate something similar to this, your technique would change dramatically, you know, depending on how tight the afro hair is itself. You know, afro hair is, you know, you're not restricted in what you can and can't do, but you need to approach it in a different way, you know, and that's kind of one of those ones that straight, wavy, curly, thick hair, you know, even though you work a technique, the way how you'd work it on afro hair would be completely different. But in regards to fading and working with clippers, you would, similar technique, but then you would really start to pay attention to a lot of the details, because afro hair is like when you comb it one way, it looks completely different opposed to if you comb it another way. So it's making sure, again, consultation, finding out how does the client comb their hair, you know, and how does it sit properly.
Thank you.
Any other questions, my love?
No, all yours. Carry on.
Cool. Okay, we're going to apply a small amount of matte paste product. Okay, I haven't used any sea salt spray on the hair, but if I was doing this on a client, I most probably would, just to build up a bit more texture. You can see here we've applied a small amount. From here, work it within our hands. When I'm working the products, I really just want to work the product in my hand until it starts to disappear. Okay, then from here, starting at the back, because we want to push it forward, we're really just making sure that it's evenly distributed throughout the whole of the hair, and making sure that our mannequin head doesn't move. Stay. Okay, so once it's all distributed throughout the whole of the hair, okay, we're happy with the product placement. I might put a little bit more just around the fringe. You know, this is the thing, you know, less is more. If you need to add and apply a little bit more product, you can as well. You know, it's one of those ones, if you go crazy with products, anything you can do if you put too much product on is wash it out. Okay, so just be aware of that. Now, once we've done that, we're just going to use our fingertips, and then we're going to start to use a comb, and then we're just going to start to style it through. And just, you're going to see the fringe as well, like what I was talking about with the fringe, where it's going to be still thick and heavy, but it's going to have that an irregular feel towards it, which is quite a cool way, especially if you want to do something a bit more graphic. a bit more editorial. Using the back end of the comb really helps to just make sure that you're not going too crazy on the actual hair itself.
And I've got a question about scissors, and it's related to, do you have a favorite pair of scissors, or do you have loads in different sizes?
Oh mate, I love this question. Do you know the reason why? So guys, these are Mitsutani scissors. This is my own line that I've done with them. It's a collaboration. So this is the Kevin Luchmun line of Mitsutani scissors. These are 6.6. They also come in 5.6 as well. Great thing with them, you can see here, they're super thin as well. So for detailing, working through, scissor over comb, and all-rounder scissors. I was working with them for about 1.5 to 2 years on actually creating a scissor that's going to fit for myself. I went to Japan to the factory just to kind of go over different samples, show them what I like. But yeah, by far, I mean, obviously they are my line of scissors, but by far, I mean, these are the most comfortable scissors that I tend to use. And for all-rounder, scissor over comb, like I said, detailing, point cutting, whatever, they're just a great all-rounder. That was my little plug though.
And then I've got another question related to product and finish.
Okay.
About whether too much product does ruin your desired finish.
Too much product, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if you use too much product, it's just gonna. So I think sometimes people put too much product because with too much product, you can start to cover mistakes. So it's kind of like I always say, when you do a haircut and you have no product in it and it looks good, then you've done a really, really good haircut. It's when you start putting products in and you start like putting more product in order to sort of disguise bits and bobs. But yeah, I always say with product, less is more, you know. I mean, I have no hair, but I can only imagine the idea and sensation of having too much product in your hair, you know, as a girl. Like, you know, imagine if you've got too much product in your hair, you're just like, oh my God, it's itching my hair out. You know, it's probably the same with men. Well, actually, men are a little bit dirtier than girls, so it's kind of one of those. They might like it a couple of days, but I don't think anyone really loves a massive product buildup, you know. So yeah, less is more. Like I said, you can always apply more product. If your clients wanted more product, just apply more product.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than having a head full of product as a woman. But,
is there any other questions just before I do a recap?
No, they're all good. Everything has been answered in one way or another on our little question board. So quickly get them in if you've got anything else to add, please.
Okay, so just a quick recap on what we've done today. So you can start to see here that we've worked a low taper fade, okay? Subdivided section the hair off as a horseshoe, worked with the low taper throughout the perimeter outline, fading from a short length up towards a longer length. At the back area, we connected it through at the back area, working towards a low elevation, so there wasn't too much of a buildup of weight, and so we didn't take it too short around the crown area, so it's going to still lay flat. Everything was over directed to the top of the ear, so there's a slight overhanging, which is going to enable us to have it a little more top heavy on top. As we started to work towards the top area, we worked through horizontally, point cutting through square. As we went towards the fringe area, we worked with neck trimmers and really just created an irregular shape. Two tools that I ended up working with are the BaByliss trimmers and the BaByliss clippers. BaByliss clippers just around the sides and the back, just to do the fade, and then the trimmers just to detail around the outline shape and also detail the fringe through.
And they're really good because they come in a little stand, don't they, that you can keep them on charge for the whole day.
Yeah, so exactly, yeah.
On 12th of April, in the shop, stick them on charge all day and you'll be set for those 12-hour days.
12-hour days? I can't remember the last time I done 12-hour day. I'm more like 14, 16.
24 hours.
Yeah, come on, I don't sleep. When I'm sleeping, I'm working. My brain's working.
We have actually got some questions for you. When you're out of lockdown, do you have one-to-one training for specific skills and areas?
Yeah, I mean, let me get, actually, he can just stand here. No, we get him out of the way.
About me now.
Yeah, I'm just going to talk to you. Yeah, I mean, I offer one-to-one training. You know, I think I was trying to think, when was the last time we done this? Actually, it was during lockdown, wasn't it?
It was. We did an event in September time, if I remember.
Yeah. So, and then I'd recently just got the studios, wasn't it? Yeah. So, like, you know, this is the thing. I think, like everyone, like myself personally, I'm just kind of like sitting tight. Like, I'm waiting for things to be set in stone. Like, and I think for a lot of people, even though we've been given the date 12th of April, whenever it is, I'm not banking on that. I'm not to say that, I'm not to say that it won't happen. Like, I'm praying to God it will, because I miss the gym. I don't really miss cutting hair. No, I'm joking. No. But it's one of those ones that I think, when things start to open up, like, I will start to offer one-to-one education. I will start doing group classes, like, obviously making sure that it's COVID secure in my studios, because that was the initial plan, to have this in the academy, start doing courses on photography, courses on hairdressing, courses on, if you want to do some pull-ups, whatever, and it's one of those ones that, like, that is the plan. But I know full well, as soon as the 12th of April happens, if things open up, like, it's going to be crazy busy for everyone. But then it's, my services for doing education, my services for doing photography as well, because of course, like, come April, then it's going to be May. People are going to be wanting to shoot different competitions, British Hairdressing Awards, and it's great that I've got these studios that I can work from. I can do shoots, I can do education, So yeah, I guess I'm just waiting for things to really open up and 100% open up, and then I can start promoting and obviously talking about it.
Brilliant. So people should stay tuned on your Instagram pages and your social media news on that.
Exactly.
And we've got another question asking how long you've been cutting gents hair. I've not heard the phrase gents hair in a little while. I quite like that.
So I'd say I've been in the industry for about 19 years now. Started when I was about 17, and quick story with it is I started when I was 17. I was at college. I was studying travel and tourism. I thought I wanted to, I don't even know what I wanted to do when I was younger. And I've always had a shaven head. One of my friends wanted his hair cut, started cutting his hair at college, then started cutting my other friend's hair. And then I basically enjoyed it. One of my friends worked in the barbershop, got me a job in the barbershop, started working there. And then, just kind of progressed from that. So I was in the barbershop, working in the barbershop for maybe 3-4 years. Fast forward that, then I wanted to learn ladies hairdressing, started with Tony and Guy. I was with Tony and Guy for like 11, 12 years. As you know, I became an international art director, done all that stuff, the campaign shows, Salon International. And then I left them back in 2017 to basically just concentrate on my own brand, my own education and my photography and family life, which is most important, and fitness and health.
The 2 Fs.
yeah, literally.
And then
that's good. I like that. The 2 Fs.
Thank you. Someone is asking, and I think it's specifically about KL education. They've said, for someone that's been out of the industry for a while and lost their confidence, would you recommend the contemporary or fundamental course?
I'd say you'd want to go for fundamentals, just so if you feel like you've lost in confidence. I think if you go back to basic, I always say it's great to go back to basics, because what I think a lot of people need to understand as well, and there is a lot of people that understand this, that a creative haircut is taken from fundamental and classic knowledge. It's just your creative way of thinking. You're still going to do a graduation, which is a fundamental skill. You're still going to do a layer, which is a fundamental skill. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I'd say, strip it all back, do your fundamentals, and get back to scratch on your basics. And it's like anything. I think if you're talking in regards to what I offer, if a student came to me and said, look, I've been in the industry, I lost a bit of confidence, I'm not really too sure, like, I would more or less just do something that's going to be bespokely made for them. So it's kind of like, have the combination of fundamentals and have the understanding of doing a creative haircut as well.
Perfect. That is an excellent answer. Thank you very much. And I think that
brings
us to the end of our session. Thank you so much to Kevin, and thank you very much to BaByliss Pro as well for the tools that we used today. And thank you all for watching and sending over such insightful questions. Kevin, you've been amazing.
Cool. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. And I'd say keep up to date to see what's happening on my social media at Kevin Luchmun on Instagram. I guess I'm doing like a few other live things as well. So just keep up to date and have a look and see what I'm doing on my social media.
Perfect. Good.
Thank you.
See you in person next time.
Yeah. Can we hug? I think last time you had like a beard, didn't you? You had like one of those like mask beards.
I did. I had a COVID mask beard.
All right. I know. All right, Charlotte, take care. All right, I'll see you soon.
Bye, Kevin.
See you later, guys. Bye.